Good morning and welcome to Collaborative Test Bank Development, Multi-Institutional and Pandemic Style. Thank you for attending our discussion. We aim for this session to be informative, helpful, and interactive. We're planning to present an overview of our project in the first 20 or 30 minutes that we have with you today. And then we're going to leave some time for discussion. So as we're talking, please feel free to add questions to the chat, and we will address them at the end or along the way as we are able. So let's introduce ourselves. Let's see, Eli, would you like to go first, please?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for being here this morning. I'm an assistant professor of management practice at Virginia Tech, and I was a collaborator in the initial adaptation process, which created the open access textbook Strategic Management. And I, along with a colleague, was the course coordinator for the Strategic Management capstone course at Virginia Tech, the semester where we developed this project. My role in the project included the development of the student formative assessment, where students wrote test items for every chapter. And to get this done, I worked with an undergraduate and graduate assistant team and provided extensive review and feedback regarding the test bank and its presentation. And with that, I'm going to turn it to Mandy, who's going to introduce herself and one of our colleagues who could not be here today.
Yes, hello, everybody. Good morning if you're from this part of the world. Yes, I'm introducing my colleague, Candace Vanderweert. Unfortunately, she could not be here today, so I'll kind of be speaking on her behalf. She's an assistant college lecturer at Cleveland State University in our College of Business. Cleveland State University is classified as a high research facility, so we're R2, and we're ranked in the top 200 schools in the US in terms of social mobility. So 73% of our students receive some kind of need-based financial aid. Candace is currently teaching the course Principles of Management, which is a fully OER course. It uses an open textbook. And she also is teaching Business Strategy and Policy, which is a capstone course, which uses a business simulation game. And her role in this project, she adopted the textbook, which we'll talk about. She helped to revise the test bank, which we'll also talk about. And she also developed some presentation materials. I am the Performing Arts and Humanities librarian, as well as the Open Educational Resource and Copyright Advisor at Cleveland State University as well. And I've been the coordinator of our textbook affordability grant program since 2018. We've been offering a small grant program for adopting or authoring open textbooks since 2014, so actually quite a while. And we've calculated that we've saved students over $800,000 to date. Candace was awarded one of our grants in 2019. So my role in the project was to facilitate this grant for Candace and support her as she pursued this collaborative project. And I'll turn it over to Anita.
Thank you, Mandy, and thank you for being two people in this presentation. So my name is Anita Walls. I'm Associate Professor and Assistant Director of Open Education and Scholarly Communication Librarian at Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech is a land-grant research R1 institution, which offers about 280 undergraduate and graduate program degrees to more than 37,000 undergrad, grad, and professional students. It also manages a very large research profile. In comparison, 41% of students at Virginia Tech received need-based financial aid for the most recent school year. At Virginia Tech, I direct the Open Education Initiative, which is operated via the university libraries. The Open Education Initiative provides broad collaborative support, mainly for faculty that want to adopt, adapt, or create, or advance their goals through open educational resources. I'm the managing editor for the open textbook, which Eli mentioned, Strategic Management, which we'll talk about more briefly, and several other OER. My role in the project was to connect the broad need for the test bank to those willing to work on one. I encourage sharing, collaboration, built processes, resolve legal and FERPA questions, and encourage completion of the project. So we're going to let you imagine a bit of a possible role that you may have. So imagine.
Yeah, so imagine you are an instructor using an open educational resource in a class for the first time. What would you want? What would you need? What would your concerns be before you started?
Or imagine that you're an instructor or administrator at a non-elite institution and you're looking for ways to reduce the cost for students and explore assessment options.
Or maybe you're the editor or project manager of an open textbook. You're starting to receive a lot of requests asking if you have a test bank, slides, activities, etc. What can you do?
Finally, imagine you have the role of funding an open or equitable or affordable project on your campus, and you have an enthusiastic faculty member who wants to create ancillary materials, but you've never supported that before, and you don't want to discourage that person. How can you encourage the faculty member and make this project successful?
So we decided to embark on this test bank development project. Let's talk a little bit about our process. As an overview for the project, both institutions started with adapting to create or adopting the open educational resource, the Open Textbook Strategic Management. Our second task really was to look at test item creation, at which point we found wonderful collaborators at Cleveland State University. We then underwent multiple layers of revision, and we finally released the test bank the instructor request process for the test bank. Eli, over to you.
Yeah, so first a quick flashback to the fall of 2020. So we had at Virginia Tech, a batch of faculty of us had edited and adapted the OER Tech Strategic Management, and that fall, we were teaching 5 sections, so about 200 to 250 students of management, 4394 strategic management. At that time, as the coordinator of this capstone class for the management department, it was immediately apparent that not having a quiz bank in place would become exponentially problematic by the spring of 2021, just for us when we would offer this course, because in the spring we offer through 9 different faculty, 19 sections, and we have about 1,000 to 1,200 students in the spring. And so I knew we were going to need a solution fast. So with speed and limited time in mind, I created an assignment that was designed to generate a lot of questions through the eyes of the student. And the assignment, you can see it's uploaded into the shed, whatever, the thing that's short for schedule, and in the Virginia Institutional Repository, VT works. And yeah, we've got the link posted there if you want to see it. Students were told that this exercise would prepare them for the exams, and it did, but also that they were contributing to future cohorts of students who would take this class. They were also explicitly asked for their consent to contribute to this test bank. So on the next slide, you can see that this exercise created really a lot of questions and a lot that had merit, but not all of them. And students got much better at writing the questions across time as they wrote more of them. As you might imagine, this created a lot of information that we had to critically sift through, and therefore we really needed a peer review process. And for this, we used 2 teams of 2 TAs and 1 GA at Virginia Tech. And on the next slide, you can see that the student team was responsible for organizing and reviewing the submitted questions according to chapter and subsection, and they removed, I think, is that on the next slide? Perhaps, I'm not sure. They removed low quality questions and duplicates. They wrote supplementary questions, and then they did another review of the bank. So the GAs were also responsible for obtaining and documenting student permission. This was a step that was implemented towards the end of the semester. Highly recommend speaking to your OER librarian earlier than I did to realize the order that things should happen. But the exercise did prove to be a really helpful way to get students engaged in the material and to test student understanding. They were not required to share their name publicly, and so nor were they required to participate in the final quiz bank generation. So they had layered choice. And the GAs managed the consent process through a short questionnaire based on student responses. They went through and they removed all students who did not consent and did not respond to the survey for consent. So that's where we were. And then Anita took it from there.
Sure. So meanwhile, I was still engaged with the author team, which created the open textbook strategic management at Virginia Tech. We were working on a set of slides for the book. And when Eli mentioned her plans to create a test bank, I immediately thought, this is a really big task. And you're likely not the only one who is interested in this. Let me see if I can find you a collaborator. Is that okay? So when we published strategic management, we had included a form where people reviewing or adapting the text could tell us a little bit about how they might use the book. Candace Vanderweert from Cleveland State University was one who had completed the form indicating interest in a question bank. So I thought, I'll just reach out and see. So I reached out, and shortly thereafter, the partnership with Cleveland State University was born. Thank you so much for joining us. Mandy's going to talk a little bit about what kind of work was done at Cleveland State.
Yes, so for those who joined late, I'm kind of speaking on behalf of my colleague, Candace Vanderweert. So what we did, Candace really got this started. She applied for one of our grants at Cleveland State, and she chose her capstone course because she thought it was a good place to start to reduce costs. Every College of Business student is required to take that course in their final semester. So a lot of students are impacted by the cost of materials in that course. And the students were just about to complete their degree. So this was an opportunity to kind of get them across the finish line. And they didn't want cost to stand in the way for that particular class. So she looked for a textbook and she found strategic management on OER Commons. And Anita had put a really wonderful interest form with the text. So Candace, being the awesome person she is, she filled out the form, said, yes, I would be happy to help with a project like building ancillary materials. And Anita reached out to her, and that's kind of how things got started.
So we then decided when we wanted to have the test bank available, how it would be organized, that we talked about the terms of use, and then our work schedule as a team. So the Virginia Tech team created the original, the students at Virginia Tech, with the assistance of the GAs and TAs who did the preliminary rounds of review, completed their work, and then we handed the test bank off to Cleveland State. So for Candace, again, the team at Cleveland State, which included Candace and her GA, Bessa, reviewed questions for grammar, rating 1 through 5, difficulty 1 through 3. They formatted the questions for the LMS. Their LMS is Blackboard, whereas the one at Virginia Tech is Canvas. But Blackboard allows for upload of questions from a properly formatted spreadsheet. Candace and her team also set the format and asked then for or found a tool for converting the spreadsheet into a file that would be compatible with Canvas. Candace and her team also worked on creating an additional PowerPoint slide deck for the textbook using the same template and using open graphics from Unsplash. There was a lot of behind the scenes work, and this is speaking for myself, not only including the development of the student consent form. I worked with legal on the contributor agreements and the release language. I lined up and reviewed the work of a copy editor. I was able to find budget to pay TAs and GAs for extra work that we didn't realize that we would need to do. And then I modified a request verification process that authenticates, manually authenticates someone as a instructor or professor as part of the Access project. I had created this for a previous test bank, so I modified it for this particular use. So our final result, and one of you did ask, where do you keep this test bank? We keep this in our institutional repository, which is called VTechWorks. So the final result is a 782 peer-reviewed multiple choice test bank, which corresponds to the Open Textbook Strategic Management. The questions are also identified by subsection, so 1.1, 1.2, 1.3 of the book, and the test bank is available to instructors upon request. We launched this on September 1st. So Mandy's going to talk a little bit about the benefits of the project.
I'm actually going to mostly just hand it off to Eli to talk about the benefits from Virginia Tech's point of view.
Well, okay. I will talk about the benefits. We saw benefits from the students, instructors, and just even at the college level. Our students are continuing to use the zero cost strategic management book. Of course, that's a huge value to our students. Questions were written by the student from a student perspective, and I found that to have unexpected benefits in terms of being able to get them to apply the questions in language that they relate to a little better, and they were credited for their work, and they kind of found that to be pretty cool. As far as instructors go, we all know how long it takes to write assessments, and so these test questions are just a huge benefit from which to draw as we're going through the semester. And then even for the College of Business at Virginia Tech, they're helpful resources with 11 to 12 instructors and 1,200 students across the course of a year. It's enormously helpful to have a common base. And then for accreditation purposes, we can show that we have access to similar assessment resources.
So there were also some benefits for the university libraries. This project allowed us to meet some strategic goals, to strengthen some relationships with Pamplin, to expand the adoption potential of the book that we had worked on, really to expand our expertise regarding methods of ancillary development and sharing. We think that this will help us to share that expertise with others and to expand the kinds of support that we can provide for faculty. Mandy.
So in terms of benefits at Cleveland State, speaking on behalf of Candace, she observed that for students, obviously cost was a huge benefit. It reduced out-of-pocket costs by $70 per student. The textbook was available to them from day one, and it's available to them always. They can have access after they leave the course. For Candace as an instructor, she really, really liked starting off with a test bank of over 1,000 questions. It was very helpful. And it was also helpful to her to talk with Eli and see what other instructors were doing in terms of structuring their course. They're still working on this in the College of Business, but this could potentially work as a measure of assurance of learning, which is really important for them. Virginia Tech is also AACSB accredited, so this test bank might be a way for us to compare CSU student performance with students at other accredited institutions. And then in terms of Cleveland State as an institution and our open textbook program in particular, obviously, this helped us to reach our program goal to increase OER adoption. Candace was able to adopt this textbook because she knew there would be ancillary materials to go with it. We have limited funding for creation projects for our program. We usually can't provide things like editing or proofreading services. So Virginia Tech has those kinds of services, and this was a really great opportunity to pool resources with them. And we kind of contributed what we had to share, and they were able to contribute those important services. Obviously, anytime we do a project like this and CSU's name can be attached to it, that gives us some attention, which is great. But I think this also could be inspiration for other CSU faculty internally to try creative projects that improve pedagogy, we can point to this really interesting and creative project that Candace has done. Our program, as I said, is fairly mature. I mean, we've been going for since 2014 or so, but there are a lot of projects that we haven't explored yet. It's a little slow going. And one of them was the development of ancillary materials. So this gave us an inside look into that process from a more developed program at Virginia Tech and from an OER librarian with more experience. It was extremely valuable to be able to talk with Anita and learn from her previous experiences. And now if we wanted to do something like this ourselves in the future, I think we'd be way more confident doing that.
Well, I certainly enjoyed working with this team and learned a lot from them as well. So, so we will note some of the additional benefits that are a little tangential, but really important. So we really enjoyed experiencing building a well-functioning team. Several of us noted that it was enjoyable to work with other professional women in a male-dominated field. We had the satisfaction of a job well done. And we should also note that even though this is not so valuable for promotion and tenure or career awards, we did this because we had a shared commitment and common goals, and because we know it is so valuable for teaching, learning, and cost reduction.
Yeah, I would also, one of the things we would want to note, while there has been an attitude shift at my institution in recent years, particularly, there's been a legacy of considerable resistance to OER adoption and investment within my college and really to other initiatives. So for a variety of reasons, they, citing, of course, limited time and objection to giving away labor for free. So really the context matters in terms of engaging in these kinds of projects, even with the benefits we've outlined.
And speaking on behalf of Candace, she, this is her area of expertise, but she did also experience some resistance in our marketing department as well about whether an OER would be a high enough quality for a capstone course. But then when we had Virginia Tech as a partner, that really seemed to calm a lot of those fears. And then in terms of benefits beyond our institutions, obviously now there is a beautiful test bank that can be used by others. And specifically, it's a test bank created by students. So it has student perspectives in it. And that allows it to have more diverse perspectives that may resonate more with other students. Having a test bank encourages faculty to adopt the textbook. And we have really seen that happen. 14 schools beyond Virginia Tech and CSU have already requested it and are using it. And we just released this on September 1st. So there's clearly a lot of interest. And then in terms of some tips and takeaways for you, if you're considering something like this, if you're an OER program coordinator, I want to emphasize multi-institutional collaborations are possible with the right partners and goals. I think there is an opportunity for more folks in the open ed community to kind of do these sorts of cross-institutional collaborations. Geography and institution type does not need to be a limitation. Virginia Tech is very different from Cleveland State in terms of where it is and kind of the prestige level of the school. And it was still very successful in a lot of ways, maybe more successful because of our differences. And we also didn't have a huge amount of funding, but because we worked together and pooled our expertise and resources, it was more successful.
I would also emphasize that it was not just Cleveland State that received benefits from this. Virginia Tech received a lot of benefits from having this collaborative partner and helping getting these things done. But in terms of other opportunities for faculty and on behalf of Candace, you can replicate this assignment at your institution. I mean, as I said at the beginning of our presentation, I created this assignment basically out of desperation, knowing I would need the resources. So you can replicate it. And if you have and can get and leverage support resources. It does take a fair amount of support between TAs or GAs to work collaboratively with. So student input and perspective is really valuable in this process. Again, as I said earlier, contact your librarian early. They know what they're doing and are a really valuable help when you're doing this. And for us, Anita was our process champion, and that was so critical through the pandemic. Like on the dime, we knew when we were going to meet, what we had to do, and it was so important in moving what was really a lot of little details together collaboratively. It was really critical to coordinate the meetings, to coordinate the resources, etc. So also give yourself some time for this, because it becomes a lot of data quick, depending on how many students you're dealing with. Give yourself a whole semester and maybe plus a summer. I think that's what we actually took. And don't rush, avoid the burnout that this could do. And I mean, I think for all of us, one thing we repeated is that we really enjoyed working together, which made a lot of this a lot more fun, frankly.
Yeah, so we definitely enjoyed working together, and I'm sorry that that Candace is not here to enjoy presenting together with us, but we welcome your questions. I see that there's some questions in the chat. Our part of the presentation is done, so we've answered some questions as they've come in, but there are several questions, and for people who have not, who came in partway through, perhaps it would be good for us to just briefly summarize what's in the test bank. So it's a series of multiple choice questions with answers that is importable into many different forms of learning management systems. It is access controlled. The access control involves instructors submitting a form agreeing to the terms of use, sending a copy of their syllabus, and then requesting the file from our institutional repository, which is called VTechWorks. So that's a manual process. It's something that I do, that I get lots of requests from people for that. That information is detailed in the institutional repository. We'll put the link in the chat for those who missed it already, but there are lots of questions. So Mandy and Eli, please feel free to jump in if there's some that she would like to especially answer.
Well, I'll clarify could they copy questions from a paid textbook? They were actually created by students, so who knows? The TAs didn't create the questions. The TAs edited, massaged. I would say that by the time these questions got into the test bank, they had gone through 4 pairs of eyes and 4 sets of edits. So the likelihood that it is the same question is probably slim. With that said, having worked with paid test banks from other strategy texts, there's not a lot of new under the sun. So surely there's probably similar content, but I feel pretty confident that it's credible, that these are not the same questions. I think we have credible defensibility about all of that. And then the question was, has there been a shift in thought around open from my colleagues actually, I don't think it's just mine. We had a predecessor who also worked with Anita that really helped. And he fought the hard work early, I think, in our department, particularly. Anita, I'm blanking on the actual name of that text. Maybe you can.
The fundamentals of business.
The fundamentals of business text.
Yeah.
And so because he broke the water, us coming in on this really helped with the reception. That said, and I think it's constantly improving. It's now being used with our capstone class for the entire college. So I think it's more of kind of a slow, insidious spread that people are recognizing this. So yeah, the attitude is shifting, and I think this helps. But I don't want to take credit for breaking the ice on that.
There's a lot of ice to break. So Eli, in terms of the number of questions, did the students have to prepare an exact number of questions? Can you talk more about the assignment?
Yeah, the assignment itself I designed, they had to submit for every chapter. So basically a set almost every week, because there were 10 chapters at the time in the textbook, or maybe there's 11. Almost every week they were submitting 3 questions, and they had to be 3 different forms of questions. One was on content, one was on application, and one was basically a synthesis question. And they found that really hard to do. I have had anecdotally students report to me since that they learned the material really well. And they also, I like this side benefit, maybe it should go in our presentation. They had a lot of appreciation for how hard it was to write test questions after doing this assignment. So yeah, so like I said, I had 150 plus students that semester. So for every single I had somewhere between 125 and 150 upwards of 450 questions for every chapter after they did this assignment each week. Were the learning outcomes in Eli and Candace's course similar or identical? You know, I don't know the answer to that. As you asked that, I realize I'm making an assumption about this because we are both ASCSB accredited schools, and these are both capstone courses for both of our colleges. I am making this. I know that we use case studies. They use a simulation now, so we get at it in different ways. But if you look at, I think our learning outcomes are probably very similar because we're using the same textbook. So no, and I don't, in the early stages, it did not play a role at all. Because like I said, I started this assignment out of desperation, and she really wanted a test bank she thought she was going to have to create. So we created a creative synthesis out of opportunity, I think, as much as anything else. There was a question, I think, probably more to you about how to share the questions between 2 colleges.
Sure. I think we shared them in a Google spreadsheet. So it was very much, here is the bulk of what we have that's formatted in a certain way, and go at it. So we did do the same with the copy editor at the end in terms of sharing that spreadsheet with the copy editor and them making comments and then grammatical and spelling changes with things that didn't change the meaning, and then adding questions regarding the content where something was unclear.
There a question there about statistical analysis. We have not done a statistical analysis on these questions. That's a great idea. What I can tell you more anecdotally, since implementing both, having them in both semesters. So now I have written the questions and I have implemented the questions. I didn't used to do weekly quizzes on the chapter, and then because we use cases on the case as well, I can tell you that my test average, and we have changed tests since this, has bumped up 5 points. And we take one collective test across all sections. Now, I only have 1 semester of data on with the new exam because that's just rolled out this semester. And I was shocked at how good we give case exams, a midterm and a final. And so all of the students have 1 case. We do not discuss it ahead of time. They come in and they take the exam on the case. And typically my averages have been as low as 77, 78. This semester, it was an 85. Now that was on the high end compared to other sections as well. And it's a brand new exam, so I tend to discount cheating, despite all of the evidence of the new cheating regime.
Yeah. So there is a very funny comment on making an OER won't make you rich, but might make you famous. The book does get a lot of use around the world. So we have it in a few different formats. The PDF right now has, between the 2 different PDF versions, has around 43,000 downloads. And then the Pressbooks version, I don't have the most recent data on that, but we do have, in our institutional repository, do have a way to look at where people are accessing the book, specifically not the test bank, but the test bank requesters are also worldwide. But these are the countries that are the top viewers of the book at this point. So we're really excited with the reception to these kinds of publications. When we worked on the Fundamentals of Business, which is the first book that we worked on in the College of in Pamplin College of Business. The professor said, well, I didn't really think anybody would use it. And as a requirement of working with the library's open education program, I said, you have to share. These are part of the terms of use. And so he is constantly surprised with how many downloads that book has and how much usage. We had a different method for creating a test bank for that book that included a sprint method. It was in person. It was also multi-institutional. I had a wonderful mentor who helped me to design the process and kind of coached me through how to keep the tone in the room up, even though people were working. That was not a student assignment. There was no student input into it, but it was another way of doing things. And that test bank is also really popular. Slides are popular. Of course, the more you give people, the more they ask for other things. But I think the trying to get other schools involved in contributing and providing a structure for contribution is really valuable and is a lot more encouraging than when you just get emails asking for stuff. So that's why I have the forms, the adoption and interest forms to glean levels of interest and further engagement in creating things, in contributing assignments or things that faculty create when they teach. Those are every faculty member, every instructor is going to create some materials to support their course. And the course is not the textbook. A textbook is part of a course, but it's really not the bulk of facilitating learning. There are a lot of other things that go into facilitating learning. So finding out, how people teach and what they use and what they made original that they're willing to share is a really great thing. On that, something that that I created is an instructor resource portal, and I do this for all of the open textbooks that we create. This is in OER Commons, and it's linked from the homepage of the book, and it just includes a link to the book in OER Commons, a link to the class slides for this book, a link to the page that we just saw, the Strategic Management Test Bank landing page, and it includes a place for discussion, and sometimes there is sometimes there is not some, but I would love to hear other people's ideas about how to facilitate the more multi-institutional collaboration. This is obviously somewhat labor intensive. It's been really fun, but how do we do this? How do we scaffold this kind of support? So yeah, we welcome other questions, and I see we're at 10:10. So thank you so much for joining us today. And our contact information is here on the last slide of the presentation. And these slides did not fit into Sketch. So if you want to see them, there is a link to the institutional repository where both the slides, the assignment, and the student consent form live. Those are all openly licensed. Please use them. We'd love to know how you're using them if you decide to do this. It's fun for us to see people glom on to new ways of doing things, and we really love to share. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, everybody.
There's something calming about watching all the flashing going out, when everybody's just